Good morning. Good to have you with us on this Friday. I'm Joe Fryer.
Yeah, I'm Savannah Sellers. Happy Friday. We're going to get started right here in New York this morning, where closing arguments are set to get underway in the E. Jean Carroll civil defamation damages trial.
It follows a tense day in court yesterday when former President Trump clashed with the judge before taking the stand. Trump was limited on what he could say on the witness stand because of the verdict in the previous trial, where he was found liable for sexual abuse and defamation. Despite all this, he still called Carroll's accusation false during his testimony, and the judge quickly ordered that claim stricken from the record. Carroll is seeking at least $10 million in damages. The case will soon be in the hands of the jury, which will now decide how much money Trump is going to have to pay. MSNBC anchor Yasmin Osugian and NBC News legal analyst Danny Ceballos join us now for more on this case. So, Yasmin, after all that, Trump was on the witness stand about, 3 minutes? So walk us through what we heard and what the jury can actually consider.
Yeah, all the anticipation, right, Joe and Savannah, and it was all just about 3 minutes. 2:16, he took the stand. 2:19, he was off the stand. That even included cross-examination from Roberta Kaplan, E. Jean Carroll's attorney. Really 3 questions or so from Alina Habba that had been passed by Judge Kaplan earlier before they allowed the former president to testify, because as we had talked about over the last couple of days, there were restrictions on the former president's testimony, the things that he could and could not say. He couldn't say he didn't sexually assault E. Jean Carroll. He'd already been found liable. He couldn't say that it was all a hoax. He'd already been found liable. He couldn't say he didn't defame her. He'd already been found liable in the previous trial. Let me just read for you some of the questions that were asked by Alina Habba. You viewed your deposition. Yes, I did. You stand by it. 100% yes. Do you deny the allegations to defend yourself? Yes. I consider it a false accusation. That was stricken. He wasn't allowed to say that because he's already been found liable. Did you ever instruct anybody to hurt Miss Carroll? No, I just wanted to defend myself, my family, and frankly, the presidency. Also stricken as well. And then they went into cross by Roberta Kaplan, much of which was objected by Alina Habba. Let me just say 2 things I think we need to consider going into today. We're going to hear closing arguments early this morning, starting around 9 a.m. The former president will, in fact, be in that courtroom. He canceled an event in Arizona later this evening for the campaign trail to be here in the courtroom for closing arguments. Then they're going to shift, of course, to the jury. The decision will then be in the hands of the jury, likely after lunch. We'll likely get a decision after that. Let's consider with this the jury makeup, right? When the jury was being gathered, 2 big questions they were asking was, where do you get your news from? And who did you vote for? The people that were chosen for this jury pool were fairly vague about the things that they watched and who, in fact, they voted for. The other big case that E. Jean Carroll's attorneys was building was the former president's net worth, right? His wealth, the amount of money he has. So the jury likely to focus on that as well as they consider the decision likely later on this afternoon, guys.
Danny, let's bring you in here. I want to start there and talk about some of the stuff that we saw from Carroll's lawyers. One of those things being this video deposition in which Trump is repeatedly bragging about his wealth, as we just heard reference there. They also focused on clips from a news conference last week where Trump called Carroll's sexual assault claim a rigged and made up story. Also, Truth Social posts as well of his. How are the types of things that we saw discussed yesterday central to this case?
Yes, and there was also videotape where he bragged about his wealth. And that was actually the most compelling to me, because for punitive damages, you have to demonstrate a couple things. You have to demonstrate the defendant's hatred or ill will or spite, but also relevant in punitive cases is discovery on the wealth of the defendant. That may sound strange, but if punitive damages are designed to punish, a dollar amount to each of the 3 of us would be a different kind of punishment than it would be to a billionaire like Trump. And I thought this was really clever by plaintiff's counsel to take this deposition testimony, introduce it. It's under oath, it's sworn, and it's Donald Trump saying, I'm worth billions and billions of dollars. So you have this admission to the jury, and now you can argue to them in closing, look, what is a dollar amount that would make someone feel the pain to punish a defendant for what he did? Well, you saw how much money he has. Think of a number that fairly would punish him, that would make him think twice about doing this again. Not a regular guy on the street, but Donald Trump, who just told you in deposition testimony that he's worth billions of dollars. What is the dollar amount that would fairly punish a billionaire?
So, Yasmin, the jury is expected to get this case today. A verdict could come quickly, could come today. We certainly saw a quick verdict last time. But looking forward, what is next on the former president's busy legal calendar?
What is not next, Joe, I think is really more the question, because he's got a very busy legal calendar. ahead of him, along with, of course, running for re-election of the president of the United States. Just down the road from me, and I've talked about this repeatedly, we're waiting a decision from Judge Engoron either next week or the week after, a judgment, of course, on the Trump civil fraud trial, which could basically say the former president never works again in New York City. The payout that Letitia James is looking for there, $370 million. So, right, you add that up with what E. Jean Carroll here is asking for, $10 million. Who knows how much more? As Denny Savalas just said, in punitive damages, the former president is looking at a possible payout of $380 million plus in the next couple of weeks. We got a motion that the former president and his attorneys joined down in Georgia to remove the Fulton County DA from that case. That's going to be heard by the judge down there in mid-February. And then, of course, we're awaiting the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals decision in Washington when it comes to the Trump immunity case. So he's got a lot on his calendar in the next couple of weeks that we're going to be watching for.
Danny, Yasmin just referenced what's happening in Georgia. That, of course, is Trump's election interference case. I want to ask you about that before we end this segment. Yesterday, Trump's lawyers, they joined a motion to disqualify Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis from leading the case. There's been a lot of back and forth here. Tell us the latest and exactly what we know about that and when we might hear.
Yeah, this motion really has the potential to derail the Fulton County case. It really follows two avenues. The first one is to dismiss the entire indictment because there were defects in how they got the indictment. Specifically, the special prosecutor was not properly appointed. Secondly, the argument is that because the DA and the special prosecutor had this improper relationship, allegedly, they should be disqualified because of the appearance of impropriety. And if they're disqualified, that raises the question of who will carry the banner forward in this case.
All right. Danny, Yasmin, thank you both. Appreciate it.
Yes, we do. Also playing out in a courtroom yesterday, former Trump advisor Peter Navarro was sentenced to 4 months in prison for defying a January 6th committee congressional subpoena.
Navarro was also ordered to pay a fine of nearly $10,000. He was convicted in September on 2 counts of contempt of Congress for refusing to testify and hand over documents during the committee's investigation of the attack on the Capitol. Navarro's lawyer asked the sentence be immediately stayed because of, quote, novel issues presented in the case, including Navarro's stated belief that his conversations with the former president were protected under executive privilege. Navarro is appealing his conviction. Heavy rain continues to slam the South with millions under flood alerts this morning.
Yeah, in Louisiana, flash flooding even trapped several cars. It flooded homes and businesses and left some people to use kayaks even to get around. That's what you're looking at on your screen. More rain is in store for the West and the Northeast. So Michelle Grossman is here with us tracking that. Hi, Michelle. Good morning.
Hi there, guys. Happy Friday. Yeah, it's like the rain that won't quit. We're going to see a little break in New York City, Philadelphia, so portions of the Northeast. But a lot of us are still seeing the rain falling right now. 18 million people still impacted by flood alerts. We're going to see this throughout the weekend. Where you see the green, that's your flash flood. Also seeing flash flood warnings where you see that maroon box. So again, we will see these popping in and out throughout the day as that heavy rain falls. So this is what radar looks like right now. The heaviest rain is actually falling to the north throughout the Great Lakes into the interior parts of the Northeast. We're going to get another wave into the south, and that's going to bring soaking rains later on today. But notice some pinks popping in on these last few frames. That's that colder air working in the precipitation, meeting up with that cold air. That's why we're seeing that pink and purple, so freezing rain, and also seeing some snow. We could see some accumulating snow in portions of northern Maine, a few inches, not a whole lot, but still causing some slippery travel. In addition to that, we have a lot of fog across the country once again. So we're looking at flash flood risks once again in the south once we get that second wave coming through, actually the fifth wave, whatever it is, the second wave within the past 24 hours. So an hourly rainfall rate of 1 to 2 inches. Where you see this darker blue, Jackson, Alexandria, New Orleans, seeing the likeliest thought of seeing some flooding rains. We're also looking at some rain in terms of rainfall. We're looking at 1, 2, 3 inches of rain. So we're looking at the darkest colors here, reds, oranges, yellows. This is where we're going to see the heaviest amounts of rain. Snowfall forecast, again, not a whole lot, but still see some accumulating snow. We're looking at anywhere from 1 to 3 inches. Where you see that darker blue, that's where we're looking at the highest amount of snow. Although I think those New Englanders like it. This is what it looks like. We have lingering rain and wintry mix in the Northeast. The next surge of rain developing over the the southern plains. That's going to bring the chance for severe storms by tomorrow as it makes its way into the southeast. So Alabama, also Georgia, on the lookout for some strong storms later. And then we'll get a little break in the mid-Atlantic, the northeast. And then Sunday, we're looking at more rain. And we could see some snow in spots. I think I-95 is going to be the cutoff. So New York City should be all rain, but we're going to watch it over the next couple of days. Here we go again.
Using the umbrella more this January than I imagined.
I know. More than I would like.
Hopefully you got one for Christmas.
Exactly. Thanks,
right,
Michelle.
Thanks,
Sure.
The state of Alabama carried out the first nitrogen gas execution in the U.S. last night. 58-year-old inmate Kenneth Smith was executed by means of nitrogen hypoxia. Prison officials say Smith was strapped to a gurney and forced to breathe nitrogen gas through a mask, depriving him of oxygen. Smith was convicted in the murder-for-hire killing of a preacher's wife, Elizabeth Sennett, back in 1988. The commissioner of the Alabama Department of Corrections says the execution was carried out with no issues.
Appeared that one, Smith was holding his breath as long as he could, and then there's also information out there he struggled against his restraints a little bit, but there's some involuntary movement and some agonal breathing. So that was all expected and is in the side effects that we've seen or researched on nitrogen hypoxia.
A previous attempt to put Smith to death by lethal injection 2 years ago failed when prison staff were unable to find a suitable vein. That incident, as well as other issues, caused Alabama officials to pause lethal injection and find an alternative method. Now let's turn to Washington as negotiations on a deal tightening immigration laws appear to be in jeopardy this morning.
During a closed-door meeting with fellow Republicans on Wednesday, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell cast doubt on a deal being reached. Now, McConnell has been pushing for a bipartisan deal to pass border legislation and foreign aid together. But former President Trump is asking GOP members to kill the immigration deal, which would leave a deal for Ukraine funding in doubt.
NBC News Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley joins us now with the latest developments here. Julia, good morning. So what can you tell us about this closed-door meeting? What do we know that happened?
Well, what it shows is the power of Donald Trump on the Hill. He's a candidate, he's a former president, he is not in any of these meetings, but boy, is his presence felt. And what we understand is that basically the former president doesn't want this deal to go through. He's messaging that to Republicans. And now you have McConnell, who's starting to walk back. He said one of the things that we were able to report, that my Hill colleagues were able to report, is that he said, you know, the border used to be what united us and Ukraine divided us, but the politics have shifted, that they're now dividing, especially among Republicans, about whether or not there should be a border deal at all. It's not about brass tacks. We've talked a lot about the things that the Democrats were willing to negotiate on, some of the things that were holding this up. This really just has to do with whether or not they're going to do a border deal at all.
A lot of criticism about what McConnell had to say, including from some Republicans like Mitt Romney. We've since heard from Leader McConnell following that meeting with Republicans. So what's he saying and where do things stand right now?
Yeah, that's right. So at first we're reporting on a closed-door meeting, and then the Senate Majority Leader McConnell did come forward, and he talked about a meeting that he had, or things that he said to Janet Yellen and President Biden, and here's what he had to say.
I did make it clear to both of them that we have to have a credible solution to the wide-open border in order to get a bill that includes all of the things that I think are important across the Senate floor. Border security needs to be a part of this package if it's going to move out of the Senate.
And it's important to know when he's saying that there were already a number of provisions that would have dramatically tightened the border, including raising the bar on claiming asylum and perhaps increasing the number of beds in ICE detention to try to make it so that more migrants are detained as they await their court hearings. There were a lot of very, tangible ways that they were going to make the border more secure. And now he's saying, look, we need something bigger on border security. One thing they could be pointing to in this case is a House bill known as H.R. 2, which is basically a Republican wish list of everything they want done at the border. Basically, he's raising the bar here and casting a lot of doubt on whether or not a deal will be reached at all.
Julia, what level of urgency is going on here with trying to get this done?
Well, it used to be something we thought could get done before Christmas, before people left for the holidays. Now, then we started to think it was going to get done last week. We've been hearing a lot from the negotiators. Okay, text this week, text next week, at least trying to get it done by the end of January. Now it seems that there are so many Republicans who are feeling pressure from Trump not to budge at all on border and to basically not get this done because he wants to continue to use this as a political weapon to show that Biden isn't doing anything on the border, that the borders are open, keep the numbers high so that he can use that in a campaign effort against the current president. And so it seems that the urgency to get anything done now may be fading.
All right, Julia Ainsley, thank you very much.
Wall Street is looking to end another week on a strong note following Thursday's news about the economy. Markets reacted positively yesterday to new economic data showing the economy grew stronger than expected at the end of last year. NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans takes a closer look.
At this commercial glass factory in Bensalem, Pennsylvania, owner Josh Berg says the much forecast recession of 2023 never happened.
The year was good. The year was really, really good.
You had new business, maintained existing business, grew your workforce, and grew your top line and bottom line numbers in a year we expected a recession.
That's correct. as counterintuitive as that may seem.
Work happening on factory floors like this one has kept the U.S. economy humming. In fact, economic growth last year, GDP, was stronger than the average for the entire decade before the pandemic.
The economy grew 3.3% in the final 3 months of 2023. For the year, a robust 2.5%, fueled by strong consumer spending and hiring.
Continually throughout the year, we have had strong growth, and in this case, stronger growth than expected.
President Biden in Superior, Wisconsin.
America now has the strongest growth, the lowest inflation rate of any major economy in the world.
Yet polls show Americans overwhelmingly disapprove of the president's handling of the economy, the ongoing effects of high inflation, and the least affordable housing market in more than a generation, contributing to many not feeling the country's economic growth personally. But back in Bensalem, tempered enthusiasm from Josh Berg.
Letter grade. What was 2023 in a letter grade?
A minus.
A minus.
Always room for improvement, but a well-earned year from everybody here.
That was Christine Romans reporting. The Federal Reserve is set to meet next week, where we'll get an updated snapshot on the state of the economy and its plans for interest rates.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.